Good evening and welcome to the Power of Now. I'm Coach Mitchell.
And I'm Coach Darren.
We certainly thank you for joining us
Mhm.
tonight. Pardon our tardiness, but of course, technical issues always seem to be in the forefront of our um, our sessions for some reason. Nevertheless, tonight we're so glad you're here. And as it relates to our emotional intelligence, our EQ, as we call it. Coach?
Yes, as you said, Coach Mitchell, there's always technical issues. And we just had a user issue, which was on me, which was I forgot to plug the mic in. Hmm? All right. All right. So, yeah, here we are. And, when we came up with this topic, it's just from observing people. And, we always ask, are people really aware of what they're doing? Or is it that they just don't care? We all talk about how we want, first of all, people always talking about the way the world is going,
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, is that feedback? Was
No, go ahead.
okay, yeah. So, you hear it all the time, you get into a conversation with one and the world is always just going downhill. And you wonder if everybody's talking about the world is going downhill, then everybody must be perfect. Mhm.
Because who's stopping
Yes,
the snowball from rolling downhill?
yes, yeah. I mean, who's it sounds like everyone is living a perfect life and it's always someone else. So you just begin to wonder, with the behavior, are people really aware of their behavior or they just don't care? And this applies when we look at ourselves.
Mhm,
Now,
mhm.
we look at ourselves, is it that we just don't care? Um, and I don't know, like I think we can talk about several areas where people could just start to think about which is it,
Mhm.
Because how often, Coach Mitchell, do you hear someone will say in their moment, "Oh, I don't care,"
Yeah, yeah,
especially when they know that they're wrong.
exactly. When people are deliberately being defiant in
Mhm.
whatever situation they may be in. And Coach, we're going to try to look at the
Camera instead of
camera
looking at each
instead of
other.
each other,
All right.
so we're not looking over our listeners or viewers.
Okay.
Hi, Brother Jesse. Thanks for joining. Yeah, so I think that it's when we talk about emotional intelligence, we really want people to understand it's really about the ability to perceive and understand and comprehend and manage your emotions effectively.
Mhm.
And if we can master or even get close to mastering our emotions effectively, it leads to better relationships, better interactions, whether it's in our careers or in our homes or whatever dynamic of a relationship you may be in or situation you may be in. But when you lack emotional intelligence, you have a tendency to react from an emotional place. And a lot of times that reaction is one very reflective, and it's not one of deliberation, intentionality, and thought.
I think you're correct. And I think it's also when our ego tends to be in front of us or directing us.
Hmm.
And we pretty much know, though the ego has its benefits, we pretty much know in most cases it's self-destructive. You know, uh, but it's really something I think we need to become aware of. You know what? If you jump on, what social media threads and you listen to some of the things that grown people say,
Mm.
I don't know if they're searching for a laugh, if they're searching for people to connect with them. But in reality, what they're doing, I think, for any rational minded person, they're pushing people away because some of the things are just not called for.
Right.
Mm.
And I think also it's a call for attention
Yes.
versus being intentional about what they're thinking. And I also, think that a lot of times when people comment, now that you mentioned social media, when people comment on threads and you sit and scratch your head like, where's this response coming from or this reaction coming from? It's because people who lack emotional intelligence, even a moderate level of emotional intelligence, they do not interpret other people's emotions correctly.
Correct.
So that is a statement from Jesse when he says he finds that, there's a small few that genuinely don't know. However, the rest know exactly which side they're on. So deliberate, right?
Right.
It's conscious choices, as
Yes,
we
I
talked about
last week.
last week.
Mhm.
You're absolutely right, Jesse. The majority of the people know, but just maybe don't care,
Don't care.
which is the latter part of tonight's question.
Yes.
Are you unaware or you just don't care? And a lot of people, especially now, have this mindset that devil may care.
Mhm.
I can say what I want to say, I can do what I want to say. In today's cancel culture, anything goes. Anything goes. And it's unfortunate because we've moved away from, again, being intentional, being compassionate, being empathetic. It's a lot of things that are good virtues that we set on the shelf. And it's unfortunate because humanity depends on a higher level of intentionality.
Mhm. And a high level of emotional intelligence, which you know, you know, uh, some of you may be aware. Again, it's referred to as EQ, which is really emotional quotient. Um, I I remember someone mentioning that on a thread, and someone jumping in, and I thought this was so ironic. Someone jumping in to comment that there's no such thing as emotional, you know, uh, intelligence. Never heard of it. And my thought was, this is not anything new. You know, this has been part of the conversation for years now. And I thought, here's an example where if someone had any self awareness or even self management, they would have thought, I don't know what this is. Maybe I should look it up first.
Before making a comment.
Yes, before making a comment. And
or
then
totally
disputing it. All right. So that's I think, part of the uh, your emotional intelligence is, or your emotional quotient is having that self-awareness and asking yourself, well, am I perceiving this correctly? You know, am I on the right track? Or how might this impact someone else?
Mm-hmm.
All of this comes into play. And the better you become at it, the quicker you're able to process that.
Right. Right. And that just goes back to, what I was saying earlier. People who lack awareness misinterpret a lot of what they read or some of the things that other people may say. So I think if they misread, they're going to actually respond inappropriately.
Correct.
So,
And though, where right now we've been talking about how this plays out in our relationship to other people, but it also plays out, or the question applies to, ourselves. Again, some of the things that we're doing that aren't for our higher good, are we doing those things because we are unaware or that we just don't care? Now, I'll just give you a classic example. There was a time that people who smoked smoked and may have been unaware of the ramifications of smoking. Now you see people smoke, and you have to say to them, they must not care. But you can't say they're unaware because it's been just common knowledge that smoke is not good for you.
Mhm.
So here we are in 2023. If someone's smoking, then they just don't care about their health. They can kind of come up with cognitive dissonance to justify it or to rationalize it, but underneath, you really have to pretty much say they just don't care. So I'm challenging people to say, when you look at your behavior, are you doing things that aren't in your best interest, doing things that aren't part of your higher good, or have you even thought about what your higher good may be? Now, and have that awareness to say, yeah, I know I shouldn't eat this way. I know I shouldn't do these things. Uh, I'm going to do better. Or
Mhm.
you're like, no, I don't care. And Coach Mitch, I just want to say, you and I watched a documentary the other night. I think it was called uh, Fat, Sick, and Almost Dead, and Nearly Dead,
Mhm.
something like that. And the gentleman who was changing his lifestyle was talking to people as he moved, traveled across the country. And it was kind of surprising, the number of people who said, pretty much, I don't care. No, no, I'd rather die, you know, I'll die happy.
Which there really is no happy if you have a chronic disease, because I
Correct.
can't see the happiness in that. Um, and listening to that segment and having people share that they'd rather continue with their A1C or diabetes
Mhm,
or high blood pressure than to stop some of the bad habits that contributed to their poor health.
mhm,
And it was really disheartening, because I would think if I was given a death sentence or a choice to live, I'm going to choose life,
yes.
and I'm going to make some corrective changes. It may not be, and it's not easy, something that we can do all at once, but I'm going to start implementing some small changes, at least to add a couple of years onto my life, because who doesn't want immortality,
Right.
right? So I found it interesting that, if given the choice, a lot of the people that they stop to ask the question, is it giving up fast food or living an extra 5 years that they chose
Mhm,
to remain eating the fast food? So I found that, perplexing,
yes. Mhm,
perplexing,
mhm,
but also it goes back to tonight's discussion. Are you unaware, or do you just not care?
mhm.
You know,
So, again, and it's a question in those moments in your self-reflection, if you're really truly working on yourself. If you just don't care, you're probably going to even ignore the question. You're like,
right,
I don't care.
right.
I don't care if I'm not aware. You just may live in that space, and I would challenge you to say that that would be unfortunate, because even in professional settings, this has come up where, what, do you work with people or do you work for people who have the attitude of not caring? You know,
Mm,
we this period we're going through where everything's so divisive, we'll even hear people talk about it even in their place of employment. It's always, you know, me versus them, us versus them, and people will be driven to the point where they will just say, I don't care. I don't care about this job. I don't care. And I wonder if that job is providing you a source of I was going to say revenue income. You want to you should be caring on some level because it impacts you, and anything that impacts you, you should have some level of care.
exactly. And, I think also it shows up in not just the comments that people make, but also in their relationships.
Yes.
Strained relationships
Mhm.
are born out of a lack of emotional intelligence, because if you don't know how to communicate, you're definitely going to have issues in all of your relationships. Um, Shows up in the workplace.
Mhm.
You cannot effectively work in a team environment if you have poor emotional intelligence, because again, you lack communication. You can't be an effective leader because you are effectively not being effective by being stuck in your unawareness or your just don't care attitude and behavior. So you miss opportunities for personal growth.
Yes.
I mean, that's a huge learning opportunity if you just stop and listen to some of the feedback that people, I'm sure you get, because we all get feedback.
Mhm.
And unless your ego prevents you from receiving it, once you hear it and you know it applies to you, that is a prime opportunity to start doing some research on or asking some questions. How do I correct this? Because emotional intelligence can be learned.
Mhm.
It's not something that innate you're
Mhm.
born with. You know, some people maybe, yes, but the majority of us, we have to learn certain behaviors, and emotional intelligence is one of
Yep. Absolutely. And the communication part is often may not be verbal. Mhm. You know, sometimes we have to listen to the silent cues. You know, it's like the joke that falls flat. You know, maybe it wasn't your audience. Maybe the joke was inappropriate. Maybe the joke was just bad. And it's the same thing about when we may say something, we may do something. If no one else is, responding in the way we think they should, that should be a cue. And Coach Mitchell, when you mentioned about people should do research, one of my pet peeves when I hear people talk to me about things that are occurring at their place of employment, I will always go in 2023, and this goes back a few years, it was
them.
2015.
Uh-huh.
I would say the same thing. There's too much knowledge out there for people to be making this kind of mistakes as professionals.
Right.
There's really no excuse. When I hear people in leadership positions doing certain things, saying things, you know, uh, when you are dealing with blatant, say, racism or uh, you know, sexism, not misinterpretation,
Right.
when it's just blatant. When we look at things that are pushed out by companies and we're going, okay, who was sitting at the table? How did that decision make its way out that boardroom? Mhm. There's no excuse for it. Mhm.
Exactly. And I just want to address Jesse's comment that, and he brings up a good point that, and no need to apologize. We love the engagement.
Mhm.
That he wouldn't say that people don't care, however, weigh the pros and cons of whatever decision it was that they were going to make. So therein lies another component or element of our discussion, right? So are you unaware? Are you aware, or do you just not care? So that middle part there, you are aware, you made a conscious decision to walk down a particular path or behave a certain way or do a certain thing or pick up a certain thing, right? So there are really three parts to the question. So when you get to the end of just don't care, I think making a conscious decision to um um I lost my word, to make a conscious decision to partake, I'll use that, to partake in certain behaviors or behaviors or indulgences is sort of not really caring. right? It's really not caring about the outcome. You may think about it, but if you continue in that behavior or action, you're still really not caring about the outcome to
Yeah.
the point where it's going to affect your behavior to shift to a more positive or one that is going to lead you to learning or trying to figure out how to develop a skill.
You know, I would also say this, that given the example that Jesse you just gave, I don't know if I would equate that with not caring. I think it's a difference because you make a decision, and as we talked about last week, conscious choices, and consequences. You decided to make a decision based on what you knew and what you felt. I don't know if you did not care.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm in a situation. I may have to do some things that I probably would not do, that I'm probably not thrilled about, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware of the possible consequences, you know, but I'm going to go forward anyway,
Mm-hmm.
with the knowledge that I know. It's also one of the things when we talk to people, that may relapse on a diet,
Mm-hmm.
they automatically go, oh, that's really a bad thing. No, actually, it's not the way that we tend to uh, vilify it. It's you start again, but you're starting again with the knowledge that you've already accumulated. So
Yeah,
even
good
when
point.
yeah, even when you relapse with a certain awareness. I know I'm going into this. What? I'm going to eat this cookie. I'm going to eat the whole pie. I know damn well I shouldn't, but I have the awareness and the knowledge as to why I shouldn't. I may still move forward with that bad decision, but it's not the same as I don't just give up.
Right,
You
right.
know, um,
You're right.
yeah,
You're absolutely right. So it does not just lead to by default, I don't care.
right.
I care, but right now, whatever I'm experiencing or going through outweighs the long term impact. And I don't plan on doing this long term.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, I like I said, so I wouldn't equate that with when we refer to people who just don't care. Because we're all going to slip, backslide, have a mistake, whatever, and it's not going to happen because we don't care. Uh, I think the don't care attitude is coming from the repetitive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And we ask the question, do they just not care versus, are they just unaware of what they're doing and how it's impacting them or maybe impacting others?
Right, right. And I think the don't care attitude is one that really does not care, not just in that moment and not just about their emotions or other people's emotions or feelings. They have absolutely no interest in developing themselves
Correct.
versus
Yeah.
that person that's making a decision, like Jesse said, you need something in that moment
Mhm.
that's going to comfort you or I would say pacify
Mhm.
a need in that moment. Like, you were talking about experiencing sexism on the job or racism on the job. In that moment, I may need to go and drink, a Starbucks coffee where I
Mhm.
would not ordinarily drink a Starbucks coffee, or I may need to go outside and smoke a cigarette where I don't smoke, but
Mhm.
in those instances where you may have, someone who's put their back is up against the wall because you have someone with low emotional intelligence imposing their disgruntled
The
emotions
behavior,
and
the
behavior
actions.
upon a person, that they need something to help get them through that period.
Mhm. Uh, um, and I like just interject that, you know, in today's times where people are so quick to react, I got to be mindful of giving this advice because I think sometimes it could be taken out of context. But yeah, so what you're saying is sometimes we need to focus from getting from A to B and not focus on getting from A to Z because sometimes we can't have our focus. And we see this play out, especially if talking about people goal setting and having visions and so forth. You know what? Some of that is a luxury when you can think. The farther out you can think is the more luxury you have because you have to compare that to people who are really get to the point where you're looking from one moment to the next moment. Mhm. You can't plan out, you know, 6 months, 1 month, or even one week.
Trying to get through the day.
Yes. So so definitely understand when people are again just trying to get to the next moment. But I don't want that to be misinterpreted that you go out and do something irrational, totally irrational in the moment, because we see that happen where people aren't looking at you know how's how's this going to affect impact downstream. So it's kind of a balance that we want to affect. So I think if you have the emotional intelligence, you will figure it out. Even if you do backslide, you'll know that like to your point, Jesse. Like I said, you had a moment where you chose, you know, cannabis over alcohol. Well, why didn't you choose heroin or cocaine? Because part of who you are wasn't going to let you slide that far. You knew you could control what you were doing, so you cared.
Right.
You cared even in that moment where you think you didn't. You cared.
Right. Jesse says he has to go, but he'll be back.
Okay.
But thanks for joining us, Jesse. We appreciate the engagement. Okay.
So I think as again, I would challenge everybody, and I say everybody that includes myself, is that we want to keep looking at improving our EQ. And like I said, I think the better your EQ, the higher your EQ becomes, the quicker you can process. For instance, you respond instead of reacting. And we talk about that often, that we see people reacting when if a little bit of thought went into it, maybe you could respond.
Right. And Coach, I think also with that point, conflict resolution would be effective because you have individuals going into resolve a conflict with a peaceful demeanor in both their professional and their private, whatever the context might be. And I think it's important that we know the benefits of developing emotional intelligence and having that level of self-awareness because it helps to resolve conflicts that you would otherwise not be able to handle or manage in a calm manner because you're reacting out of emotions and not thoughtfulness.
Something I heard, and it had more to do with health. The person who said it didn't quote the person that they heard it from, but it was basically, first of all, is this, and I'm big on connecting the dots. So we could pretty much say that yes, we're experiencing this very divisive environment, and it's not just locally, it's not just within this country, it's really on a much larger scale. And as a result, of that mentality, that's where we go, because that's almost like that's what we feel comfortable with. You know, we feel comfortable with the divisiveness. We come to every situation ready to battle. And we talked about this before, in one of our earlier sessions. We have the whole story in our head long before we actually are confronted with the situation. Mhm. We kind of believe that to handle things in a gentle way would be perceived as weakness, when we pretty much know, it's been said over, it's a, you know, it's more powerful,
Mhm.
because you leave the other person, I was going to say your opponent, but you leave the other person kind of speechless, because what's the best way to get out of an argument? Is not to argue.
Not talking.
You know, that
Walk
leaves,
away.
yes, that leaves the other person like, okay, what do I do? But now, having said that, the uh, I was listening to a microbiologist, and he was saying, what? We can never heal with the attitude that we're going to kill something. That's not that's not how it works. You heal the body by bringing things into harmony and balance. But we have this attitude of kill, 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 kill. And you see that attitude play out in other aspects of society. That I have to demolish the other person, which I may call my opponent, my enemy,
Mhm.
as opposed to, can I approach this in a way that's going to bring harmony? No, it's going to bring balance, because that's how it's always done in nature. Nature may have its moments of disruption, which we see as bad weather, chaos. What it's doing, it's actually reaching for another level of equilibrium. It's balance, it's harmony. It's the way it was laid out for us. We tend to screw it up because we go with one attitude. It's the kill, kill, kill. So let me give you medication. Let me give you chemotherapy. Let me give you all these things that will kill the part that I don't want. And usually, what happens, whether it's in the body or whether it's in society, you do more collateral damage.
Yep.
Mhm. Or as I say, you know what? Folks will, spend $1 killing instead of a dime healing. Mhm. So just kind of think about that again. Are we not aware of what we're doing? Mhm. When you look at leaders, uh, whether they be corporate leaders or whether they're political leaders, or some of the decisions being made, are you truly not aware of the downstream ramifications, or you just don't care? And you're not going to get, if you're in a leadership position, you don't get that middle ground that we were just talking about with Jesse. All right. You know what? That's different, because you have the abilities, or you should. Mhm. You should have the abilities and the resources to make a decision where you can think about the impact. And if the impact to your downstream, uh, you know what, stakeholders are not good, then you should be making decisions to lessen the impact on them.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're ineffective as a leader.
Exactly. Because emotional intelligence is essential
Mhm.
for effective leadership, because it's the only way that, well, not the only way, but it allows for leaders to effectively lead and manage and motivate their team members. Because if you have a lack of emotional intelligence as a leader, 9 times out of 10, you're a micromanager.
Mm.
You don't trust your team. You have a problem delegating. So there's a whole lot of skills that you have an opportunity to improve upon. And, again, emotional intelligence is one of those skill sets that you can certainly learn, you can improve
Mhm.
with a lot of dedication, time, and effort. It can definitely be developed.
Yes. Mhm. Uh, so when you're lacking that skill set, it really leads to a disconnection. And from a health and wellness perspective, this year, the mantra was 2023 reconnect me, because one of my beliefs one of my beliefs is that a lot of our issues are the result of being disconnected on some level. And it just, the disconnection just, intensifies and spreads. Uh, and when you lack that emotional, intelligence, you're disconnected. You know, one might even say you're disconnected from reality, but
Well, it impacts your quality of life.
yes, it absolutely does.
It impacts your quality of life, and that's in all. Your quality of life is all areas of your life.
Hmm.
And if you don't have the emotional intelligence, what's going to happen is you sit and worry.
Mm.
Your stress levels are always high because you really don't have um, the skill sets to deal and manage the issues that occur in life because you've lacked the motivation or whatever it might be to learn a skill set, to change some of the ways that you've always operated and navigated life. And if you don't grow and develop, then you're always going to constantly experience the same, I would say, ebbs and flows, ups and downs, because you're never going to figure out how to navigate around, over, or out of situations.
No.
And you'll always approach situations the same.
No, and the other thing is we we want to spend more time looking inward, but we got to do it where you're really seeking, you know, you're, you're seeking to become a better you because we can focus on ourselves, but we tend, you know, to do it often. We tend to do it from and kind of an egotistical or self-centered approach.
Mhm.
Uh, uh,
Yes, Robin, that's correct. Thanks for joining. Hi, Tanya. Thanks for joining. Coping skills. We lack coping skills or the appropriate coping skills.
Mhm.
And I think that goes back to Jesse's point about having something to help get through
mhm.
a situation or an event. Um, but if we have the ability to cope and understand how we should apply certain skill sets to different areas of our lives or different circumstances that may occur, then we will better be able to manage not just our emotions, but those events that happen.
Yes. Mhm. Uh, you know, that's again another point. When we look at people who, again, going back to the question,
Mhm.
are you, unaware, just don't care? Some people, yeah, as they're sliding backwards,
Mhm.
because this whole question is really kind of directed toward people who are, and again, you're either in a space, you may not be sliding, that might just be the space you're just in. Mhm.
So you reside.
Right. know, or for those who feel like you're sliding in a backward uh, you know, momentum, again, that question is, are you unaware, just don't care? And if you're unaware, then you will, or I should say, if you do care, you will seek awareness. Now, what do I mean by that?
Mhm.
When you care, you will begin to look for answers to solve your challenges, to resolve your challenges. Let me see what's that. That's right. And many don't even know where to begin.
That's
Or
right.
even, okay, what? How's it?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, you know what, Robin? Again, I'm sure I probably shared this because it's one of my common things where I would ask people. I said, when I was teaching at a college, I used to always ask my students, were they familiar with the term epistemic risk?
Mhm.
And I can't remember the uh, individual who actually coined this term. So it's not mine, but it just stuck with me. And I heard it over 20 years ago. He said, you used to ask them, what, were they familiar with the term epistemic risk? And I don't think one student ever got it right. Some tried, but most of them just have no idea. And when I finally explained to them, I said, it's the risk of not knowing what you don't know. And still people would go, I'm not sure. And when I would ask them this question, it resonated with everybody. And you would see their smile and stuff like that. I said, have you ever been in a class where you were so lost that you didn't know what question to ask? And then people would start laughing because we could pretty much relate to being someplace or in a situation where, gosh, I don't even know what question to ask. So again, because I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
So to your point, yeah, many people don't even know where to begin. Now, in 2023, we have this little tool at our disposal. That tool is called Google. Yep. If you put in, and now you got AI coming on the scene, which you can get on your phone. If you even put a little bit of the question or the subject you're struggling with, you will get feedback. And then from that feedback, you'll start to massage it to the point where you can almost formulate your question. Mm-hmm. Now, equate it to something that most people might be familiar with. You ever have to clean up a part of your house and it's so disorganized that you may go, I don't even know where to begin? Would you keep putting it off? How do you eventually start, making progress? You just move a couple pieces at a time. You don't even have to find a solid place for them, but you just start moving them, and eventually you'll get the momentum and the direction to start putting things where they need to be. It's the same thing with learning when you're in that situation. So if you care, you'll start. If you don't care, you'll never start.
That's part of our mantra.
Yes, actually it is.
That's part of our mantra. That's our philosophy at the power of now. Hey, Brother James, thanks for joining. Absolutely, Coach. So I think, it's not a lost cause, right? And the beauty in emotional intelligence, and I've said it maybe 20 times already, is that if we nurture it, if we become, like you said, aware that there's opportunity for us to build a skill set, then it is possible to develop it.
Mm-hmm.
So once you become aware that you had or lacked awareness in a certain area, then I think it's incumbent upon us, you, to consider dedicating that time. And Coach, we were talking about this earlier. How much time do we spend doing nothing? Idle hands is the devil's playground. And that's what idle minds is the devil's playground. Isn't that the saying? Something like that. But if we take the time, even if it's 30 minutes out of the day to educational in your field of vocation, about nature, anything about another culture, the benefits of dedicating that time and effort to your personal development, oh my goodness, it outweighs. It outweighs. I think, you can equate it to a smoker quitting one day smoke free and your lungs start to repair themselves. One day. So just think, if you exercise your brain muscle, or if we exercise our brain muscles, because I'm not, excluded from this. If we exercise our brain muscles every day with something positive, educational, vocational, just think what we could accomplish and how much more productive we could be. And not just productive in doing things but productive in building others, in
Mhm.
building a better world, a better platform, a better
Mhm.
environment. So I think that, you know, in the grand symphony of life, where every note and every emotion carries its own melody, emotional intelligence is the conductor.
Okay, well, nicely said. Um, you know, I had over the last maybe week and a half talking to two friends, and I was explaining to them, you know, uh, my move toward natural, you know, wellness, natural, lifestyle, um, and they asked me. They immediately went to, well, that must be time consuming, and I thought it was interesting that that was their focus. Now, granted, we all have 24 hours in the day. You know, uh, for those physicists out there, or scientific people, we know it's not 24 exactly. It's like 23 minutes and 58 minutes. All right, but we're going to say 24 because that's the way we go. So, with that being said, the question is, how are you choosing to spend your 24 hours? You think because I started developing certain things, you know, creating certain, superfoods, powders, so forth, so on. Yeah. Oh gosh, that must take a whole lot of time. Well, my response then was, yeah, but I can't tell you who won the game on Sunday. I can't tell you who played. I can't tell you what's on TV tonight. Hmm? It's just, I'm sure maybe, they could, you know, or, one of my, friends who's, you know, uh, still goes to, I believe, still goes to the gym and spends several hours in the gym.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, I used to do that years ago. Um, but I've also found out too that health and wellness is not just based off of being physically fit. So I was able to shift, adapt. So I'd say that to say, how are you framing things? How do you perceive things? What are your priorities? Mm? Because all those will come into play, I think, as yeah, I want to believe that we're shifting, even though in all the chaos we may not see, but we are shifting where we're putting more importance on EQ instead of IQ, and they're both important. They're the yin and the yang, uh, you know, because again, it's about harmony and balance. You
That's right.
so it's you can care, mhm, uh, you know, and you want to yeah. At the end, I believe that how much you care, as they say, what's the old saying? People don't care what you know until they know how much you care. I think that's the
Yep.
old saying.
Mhm.
And I think that there's a balance because if you care enough, you will find the knowledge that you need to move from say from A to B to C to D. If you care enough about yourself, enough about your uh, stakeholders, you will find a way. Mm.
Yep. And coach, in today's world, what are we looking for? What are we looking for? Success. We're
Mhm.
looking for happiness. We're looking for meaningful connections, not empty,
Shallow, superficial.
shallow, superficial relationships. Emotional intelligence is not just a soft skill, it's a heart connection.
Yes.
That's what we're striving, at least most of us, because you see with mental health and the loneliness that people are feeling and the despair that people are feeling, it has to be the heart of what we do,
Hmm.
the heart of what we do. Because, like you just said, if we have a high IQ, we can know all the things in this world. But if there is no compassion, if there's no empathy, if there is no love, if there's no meaning behind the relationship that we forge, there's no heart in it,
Mhm. Mhm.
then we see how it plays out.
Now, you know, you've heard me, one of my rants where I was like, you know what, folks, stop with the corporate speak.
Yeah,
Speak from your heart. We all want to, you go on LinkedIn, everyone wants the corporate speak. Come on, that's gone. It's played. It's done. You want progress? Speak from your heart. And
people got to know you care.
yes,
People got to know you care.
yeah, I, not so long ago was listening to because when I just say if I'm watching the news or I watch people on TV or something, I kind of listen to whether they're speaking from their head or their heart. And we were watching uh, a police officer talk about I forgot where the shooting was, and he didn't give the standard law enforcement response. About we want to find the suspect and it's going to be prosecuted to the full. It was none of that. He simply said something which people need to understand. He goes, "Yeah, this doesn't stop. You know what? When we find the suspect, people's lives have been basically shattered for years. Like he went right down to the human aspect of what had just occurred. Didn't mention anything about the law. He basically spoke from the heart. Uh, and I think the more we do that and more we find ourselves, and speaking from the heart doesn't mean you're going to be vulnerable, though there is some vulnerability there.
Right.
But you don't want to be concerned about that. Huh? But again, when I talked about the connection, we're disconnected. We're disconnected because we no longer know how to speak from the heart. If you think about personal relationships, I remember a friend asking this question a few months back. He said, why is all information about relationships negative? Because everyone's trying to one up the other side,
Yeah.
and protect themselves in the process.
Right. It's a protection mechanism.
Mm.
Because trust has been violated. And it's
Mhm.
not just in relationships, right?
No.
It's not just in relationships.
No.
It's in this thing called life.
Yes.
And I think, we go back to if we're building that emotional intelligence, we're going to eventually start coming from a place of vulnerability,
Mhm.
a place of compassion and empathy, because emotional intelligence, like I said, we're looking for the heart connection,
Mhm.
right? And emotional intelligence, if we build it, then we'll be able to bridge those gaps. Because emotional intelligence will soften your heart. It'll soften your heart because it will help you understand from another person's perspective.
Yes.
And when you understand from another's perspective, it allows empathy, allows you to show empathy
Mhm.
and compassion, sincerity, and love to another. And until we get there, the contention that we see amongst humanity is going to continue.
Yep. There's a book, and it really has to do again with professional development. But the title was, I could picture the cover of the book, but I think the title was "What Got You Here Will Not Get You There." Hmm? Yeah, and what's about our IQ got us here. It got us to create some of the best technology out there. It's pushing science. It's basically giving us the tools for a better life.
Right.
Our EQ is going to take us to the next level. Our IQ basically, it's run its course and it will come back around again because everything cycles. Huh? Everything is cyclic. But it's our EQ that is needed now so that those great things that we invented, that have, all those great strides can be put to more useful yeah, uh, roles to improve humanity. Think about it. You and I, we will talk about the healthcare system. All right. We know we have some of the, you know, best knowledge, mm, uh, when it comes to better health. We spend trillions of dollars,
Yes.
but yet people aren't getting healthier because from a administrative side, from a legislation side, there's no heart in it.
That's correct.
Mhm. So we need to bring that back in. Uh,
Hello, Auntie. Thanks for
mm,
joining.
mm. Hello. Mm. So the EQ is part of bringing the heart into it. And again, depending on what thought process you have, metaphysical people, or let me say, I think it's uh, ast- uh, astrological astronomy. Anyway, let's talk about again a shift in energy. Mhm. Uh, and that's what is slowly happening. We tend not to see much of it because of the uh, all the negativity, but it's slowly happening. Uh, you know, as your aunt said, the compassion and discernment of other situations is absolutely key. And that others, I would like to say, includes everything outside of you. Mhm. That includes the environment. Your compassion and discernment for the health of the environment is also key. Mhm. An environment includes every other living thing. You know?
Yeah.
Uh, so it's important. It's a shift, and if you want to shift in consciousness, begin changing your language. Because before your consciousness is able to move into another space, you have to change your language. Your language will precede your state of consciousness.
Absolutely. So,
So,
I'm sorry, Coach, did I cut you off?
no, nope, nope, I'm
Yeah.
good.
So, any last remarks,
You know,
summary of emotional intelligence you want to leave us with?
again, I ask the question, I start with the question, are you unaware or you just don't care? And I would say begin looking at your own life, different areas of your life. And if you want to drill down even more, look at how you perceive your own health, look at how you perceive your relationships, uh, how you perceive even your resources. Mhm. Uh, and I heard something and it sort of supports, our mantra, but I heard another way of, saying it says, without commitment, there will be no start. Without consistency, there will be no finish. So you want to care enough to start. So just go there. Just care enough to start the process.
Absolutely. And, as I would like to leave off with, as you embark on your journey, whether it's in your personal life, your career, or just your quest for self improvement, let emotional intelligence be your guide.
Yes.
Cultivate it, nurture it, and let it flourish within you. Because in doing so, you will not only enrich your own life, but you'll make the world around you a better place, a more
Mhm.
compassionate place. So remember, if you don't start now, there will be no next. I'm Coach
Absolutely.
Mitchell.
And I'm Coach Darren.
It's been a very engaging session, and we want to thank you. Join us tomorrow night right here at 8 p.m. in the Power of Now for Inside, Outside on Wellness Wednesday, where we will have some health and wellness tips to help you along your wellness journey. Have a great evening.
Good night. Well, that was a last minute question.